Sarah Chin stood in her driveway at 11:47 p.m., watching the rain cascade off the edges of her brand new roof. She'd finished the renovations only 3 weeks ago, new insulation, fresh shingles, the works. The garage had been her project for months. After her divorce, she'd converted it into a workspace, a small pottery studio where she sold handmade pieces at the farmer's market on weekends. It wasn't much income, but it was hers. It was proof that she could build something. She'd been inside, making tea, when she heard it. The sound wasn't quite like anything she'd ever heard before. Not a typical car accident. This was something worse, something catastrophic. A low, grinding roar, then the immediate, shattering crunch of metal and wood and everything in between. The kitchen lights flickered. A framed photo of her daughter, Emma, rattled on the windowsill. Sarah's mug fell and shattered. She ran outside, barefoot, into the rain. What had been her garage was now a devastated cavity in the side of her house. A black Mercedes, its front end twisted into an obscene shape, was lodged halfway through the structure. Smoke rose from under the mangled hood. The air smelled like burning rubber and gasoline. For a moment, she couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. She just stood there, rain soaking through her cardigan, staring at the destruction of something she'd built with her own hands. Then the car door opened. A young man emerged, couldn't have been older than 22, dusting rain off his designer hoodie like he'd just stepped out of a minor inconvenience. He had the kind of face that suggested he'd never been told no in his entire life. Symmetrical. Tan. Angry. What the hell? He shouted, looking at his car rather than at the garage he'd just obliterated. Do you have any idea how much this car costs? Sarah felt something break inside her chest. Not metaphorically. Are you? Her voice came out wrong. Strangled. Are you seriously asking me that question? My mother's going to kill me, he continued, pacing in circles, his phone already in his hand. This is a $60,000 car. $60,000. Do you know what kind of insurance problem this is? Your insurance problem. Sarah heard her own voice rise. You just drove through my house. The boy, because that's what he was, she realized, just a boy with access to his parents' money, finally looked at her. Really looked at her. His eyes were cold, the kind of cold that comes from privilege. From knowing that his parents had lawyers. That his family had money. That whatever happened next would be solved with a phone call. Well, you shouldn't have parked in the street, he said. Sarah stared at him. This is my driveway. This is my house. You were going 70 miles an hour through a residential neighborhood. You're going to want to call your insurance, he said, turning his back to her. Actually, don't. We'll handle this through our legal team. My mother's very thorough. Through our legal team. That's when Sarah understood. This wasn't going to be simple. This wasn't going to be the kind of accident where both parties shake hands and move forward. This was going to be something else entirely. Emma emerged onto the porch, wrapped in her pink bathrobe, eyes wide with shock. She was 16, old enough to understand what she was seeing, young enough to still believe in justice. Mom. Emma's voice was small. Is everything okay? It's fine, baby, Sarah said automatically. Go back inside. I'm calling the police, the boy announced, his tone suggesting he was doing Sarah a favor. You're going to need an accident report for your claim. The police will see exactly what happened, Sarah said quietly. You were speeding. In a residential zone. In the rain. You could have killed someone. He shrugged. He actually shrugged. Could have. Didn't. The police arrived 20 minutes later. The rain had intensified, and Sarah's driveway looked like a crime scene, which, in some ways, it was. The officer, a middle-aged man named Detective Torres, examined the scene with professional detachment. He measured skid marks. He photographed the Mercedes. He took statements from both Sarah and the boy, whose name, she learned, was Brandon Meadows. Brandon's story was simple: the roads were wet, he hydroplaned, it was an accident. Sarah's story was the truth: the roads were wet, he was speeding, it was negligence. "I'll run his information," Torres said, his face betraying nothing. "See what his insurance says. These things usually get sorted out pretty quickly." But Sarah could see in his eyes that he understood. In the glow of his flashlight, she could see the pity. Brandon's mother arrived 40 minutes later in a white Range Rover. Her name was Karen Meadows, and she was exactly what Sarah had expected: blonde, Botoxed, wearing athleisure at midnight like it was a fashion statement rather than a surrender to comfort. Karen didn't even look at the garage. She walked straight to her son, pulled him into an embrace that looked performative, and then turned to Sarah with an expression of such pure, practiced sympathy that Sarah felt sick. "I am so sorry," Karen said. "Brandon's such a good driver. We don't understand how this happened." "He was speeding," Sarah said flatly. Karen's expression didn't change. "Well, let's not jump to conclusions. I've called our insurance adjuster. They'll be here first thing in the morning. We'll get this all sorted out. Your son destroyed my house." "Yes, well." Karen's voice had a note of finality to it. "That's what insurance is for. Why don't you go inside? You're getting soaked." Sarah realized then that Karen Meadows saw her as a problem to be managed. Not as a person who just had her livelihood destroyed, but as an inconvenience. Something her lawyers could handle. She watched Karen lead Brandon back to the Range Rover, watched him climb into the passenger seat without even looking back at the destruction he'd caused. Watched them drive away into the rain like nothing had happened. Emma came out onto the porch with a blanket. "Mom," she said quietly, draping it over Sarah's shoulders. "What are we going to do?" Sarah looked at the garage, at the twisted metal and splintered wood, at her pottery wool visible under the wreckage like a bone protruding from a wound. She looked at her daughter's frightened face. She looked at the tire tracks in the mud, already starting to wash away in the rain. "I don't know, baby," she said. "I don't know." That was when she remembered the camera. Her ex-husband, Derek, had insisted on installing a security camera before their divorce was finalized. She'd thought it was paranoid at the time, one more example of his obsessive need to document everything. But the camera was there, mounted under the eave of the garage, pointed directly at the driveway. She'd been meaning to take it down for months. She'd never actually checked the footage. Sarah pulled out her phone, hands shaking from cold and adrenaline. She logged into the security system. The footage was there, time-stamped and clear. She hit play. The security footage was like watching a scene from a movie, except this was real. This was her driveway. This was her life. 11:34 p.m. Brandon's Mercedes approaches from the left side of the frame, moving fast. Too fast. The rain is heavy, the road slick and dark. Sarah can see his face clearly in the headlights of the camera, concentrated, aggressive, one hand on the wheel and one hand holding his phone. He's texting. At 11:35 p.m., his car swerves slightly, correcting. He's not paying attention. He's reading something on his phone, his eyes off the road for 2 seconds. 3. 4. At 11:36 p.m., his car hits a pothole. The Mercedes hydroplanes. Sarah can see the exact moment his wheels lose traction. But he doesn't brake. He doesn't brake. Instead, he jerks the wheel to the right, overcorrecting, sending the car directly toward her garage. He could have hit the brakes. The video makes this clear. There are at least 3 seconds between when he loses control and when he hits the garage, 3 seconds where a competent driver would have pumped the brakes, would have tried to steer out of the skid. Brandon doesn't do any of that. His hand goes back to his phone. He's still looking at the screen when he hits the garage. The impact is catastrophic. The Mercedes drives through the structure like it's paper. The sound is tremendous, the crunch and crack and scream of metal. Dust and debris explosion outward. And through it all, the one thing that Sarah notices, the thing that makes her blood run cold, is that Brandon never once looks at the actual accident. His head is turned away. His attention is somewhere else entirely. Even as his car is destroying her house, he doesn't give her, or the destruction, a moment of his focus. Sarah watches the footage 3 more times. Then she calls her insurance company. It's past midnight on a Thursday, but she leaves a message on the claims line, her voice shaking. "This is Sarah Chen. There's been an accident at my property. The driver was texting. I have video evidence. Please call me back as soon as possible." Then she calls Derek. He answers on the second ring, his voice groggy. "Sarah? It's past midnight. Is Emma okay?" "Emma's fine. She's inside." "Derek, I need you to come over. I need to show you something." 20 minutes later, Derek is standing in the rain, watching the security footage on Sarah's laptop in the garage office. He's still wearing his sleep clothes, sweatpants and a northwestern hoodie, and his hair is sticking up at odd angles. He watches the video 3 times in silence. When he finally speaks, his voice is different. It's the voice he used to use when dealing with difficult clients. Professional. Controlled. "You need to send this to your insurance company and to the police," he says. "And you should probably talk to a lawyer." "A lawyer? It's an accident. He hit my house." "It's not just an accident," Derek says, pointing at the screen. "It's negligence. Texting while driving. Speeding in a residential zone. Failure to brake. This is documented proof of reckless endangerment. If you want to be smart about this, you need legal representation." Sarah's stomach drops. Legal representation. Lawyers. Fighting. This is escalating into something she's not equipped to handle. "I don't have money for a lawyer, Derek." "I'll pay for it," he says immediately. And then, seeing her expression, "Don't argue with me. This is Emma's home too. I'm not letting some rich kid's family sue their way out of responsibility." That's the moment Sarah realizes this is no longer about her garage. The insurance adjuster arrives the next morning. His name is Mitchell Gould, and he spends 45 minutes photographing, measuring, and assessing the damage. His expression grows darker with each new discovery: electrical line that's been severed, structural damage to the foundation, water damage inside the house. Total loss on the garage, he finally says, his pen poised over his assessment form. Partial structural damage to the house itself. We're looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of $80,000 to $120,000 in repairs. Sarah feels dizzy. She'd known it was bad, but that number, it's larger than her annual income. "The other driver's insurance should cover this," Mitchell continues. "They'll be responsible for the repairs. But there may be some negotiation involved." "What kind of negotiation?" Sarah asks. "Well, if they dispute liability, if they argue it wasn't entirely their fault, things can get complicated. That's when having a lawyer helps." By that afternoon, Sarah has hired an attorney named Patricia Valdez, a woman in her 50s with a sharp face and sharper intellect. She's expensive, but Derek pays the retainer without question. Patricia watches the security footage once, takes detailed notes, and then tells Sarah something that changes everything. "This boy was texting while driving," Patricia says. "In a residential zone, in heavy rain. The law is very clear on this. If we can determine what he was texting about, if we can show intent or distraction, this could be more than just property damage. This could be criminal negligence." Criminal. Sarah feels the word sit heavy in her mouth. Depends on the jurisdiction and the severity. But yes. Given that no one was seriously injured, we'd likely be looking at civil charges rather than criminal ones. However, the footage is going to be crucial. By the end of the day, the footage has been officially submitted to police and insurance. By the end of the week, Karen Meadows' lawyer, an expensive-looking man named Richard Chen, no relation, who wears suits that probably cost more than Sarah's monthly rent, has sent a counteroffer. The offer is for $10,000. $10,000 to fix $120,000 in damage. Sarah reads the offer 3 times, sure she's misunderstanding something. They're testing you, Patricia explains over the phone. They're seeing if you'll take a low offer to go away quietly. Don't. We have video evidence of recklessness. We're going to file a claim. If they don't settle appropriately, we go to court. That's when Karen Meadows calls Sarah directly. I think we should talk, Karen says, her voice warm and reasonable. Just the two of us. Without lawyers making this bigger than it needs to be. They meet at a coffee shop near Sarah's house. Karen arrives in designer sunglasses despite the cloudy day, carrying a Birkin bag that probably costs more than the settlement offer. She orders a oat milk latte and sits across from Sarah with the air of someone doing charity work. I want to help you, Karen says immediately. I really do. But you have to understand, Brandon's young. He made a mistake. He's devastated about it. He didn't look devastated, Sarah says quietly. He was in shock. Children process trauma differently. Karen leans forward, her expression earnest. I'm willing to go up to $20,000. That's a significant gesture. But I need you to promise not to pursue this further. No lawsuit. No police involvement. The police are already involved. And he was texting while driving. Karen's expression hardens slightly. Just a flicker, but Sarah sees it. That's not proven, she says. You have footage of an accident. Accidents happen. If you pursue this, we will go to court. We have resources you can't imagine, Sarah. We have lawyers in 3 states. We will bury you in depositions and motions and procedural delays. By the time this goes to trial, you'll have spent more in legal fees than your repairs cost. Is that really what you want? Sarah feels something cold settle in her chest. This is the real Karen Meadows, not the Botoxed woman pretending to sympathize, but the one who sees legal consequences as an inconvenience to be negotiated away. I want my house fixed, Sarah says. I want your son to take responsibility for what he did. Brandon is taking responsibility, Karen says, her voice dropping to something almost dangerous. He's offering $20,000. That's responsibility. That's more than most people would offer. If you want more, if you want to pursue this vindicatively, then you're not interested in resolution. You're interested in punishment. And that makes you just another bitter woman trying to squeeze money out of a successful family. Sarah stands up. Their conversation is over. Tell your lawyer we're proceeding with the claim, she says. 3 days after Sarah rejects Karen's offer, she gets a call from her insurance company. The adjuster's tone has changed. Instead of sympathy, there's something like professional distance. We've received correspondence from the Meadows Insurance Company, he says. They're disputing liability. They're arguing that the road conditions were a contributing factor. That your property maintenance might have played a role. My property maintenance? Sarah repeats, incredulous. He drove through my garage. I know. But they're arguing that if you'd filled the pothole that caused the hydroplane, the accident might not have happened. It's a weak argument, but it's one they're making. We're going to need more documentation from you about the condition of the road. The pothole. The one Brandon's tire hit right before he hydroplaned. Sarah had reported it to the city 6 months ago. It's not her responsibility to fill. But Karen's lawyers are betting that the hassle of proving it won't be worth Sarah's time. By the end of the week, a man in a suit shows up at Sarah's door with a clipboard. He's a private investigator hired by the Meadows Insurance Company. He takes photographs of the driveway, not of the damage, but of other things. The cracked sidewalk. The peeling paint on her front door. The way her gutter is slightly misaligned. Just documenting, he says, smiling without warmth. Standard procedure. Sarah realizes what's happening. They're building a case. If they can argue that Sarah is negligent about her property, they can deflect blame. They can make this her fault. Emma notices the change in her mother first. The way Sarah starts checking her phone obsessively. The way she stops working on her pottery. The way she jumps when the phone rings. "Mom, you're scaring me," Emma says one evening, finding Sarah at the kitchen table with a stack of documents spread in front of her. "I'm fine," Sarah lies. Derek notices too. He calls her one evening and she can hear the concern in his voice. "Patricia says they're threatening a countersuit," he says. "They're claiming you created a dangerous property condition." "It's bullshit, but it's the kind of threat that makes people settle." "I'm not settling," Sarah says, but her voice is weak. "I know. But you need to understand what you're up against. Karen Meadows doesn't lose. That's what Patricia told me. She has a reputation. She hires the best lawyers. She makes problems go away. Good thing I have Patricia too." "Patricia's good," Derek says. "But she's one lawyer. They have 3. And they have money that makes her fees look like pocket change." Sarah understands what he's not saying, she's outmatched. But she can't back down. She won't. Because if she does, if she takes a settlement that doesn't cover her costs, she'll have to sell the house. She'd have to move Emma to a smaller place, a cheaper place. She'd have to admit that the system works for people like Karen Meadows and against people like her. She can't accept that. 2 weeks into the dispute, Sarah gets a call from Patricia. "I need you to come to my office," Patricia says, her voice strange. "There's something you need to see." Sarah goes immediately, leaving Emma with Derek. Patricia's office is on the 15th floor of a downtown high-rise. She has a view of the city, floor-to-ceiling windows, and a desk made of polished mahogany. Patricia is sitting at that desk when Sarah enters, and her expression is grim. "Their investigators have been looking into your background," Patricia says without preamble. "They've found some things they think they can use." "What things?" "Your divorce was acrimonious, correct?" Sarah feels her stomach drop. "That's normal. You've had some financial difficulties since the divorce." "I'm fine. According to their documentation, you've been delinquent on property taxes twice in the last 3 years. For 3 months. It was an administrative error." Sarah hears her voice rising. "What does this have to do with Brandon hitting my house?" "Nothing," Patricia says quietly. "But Karen Meadows' lawyers don't care about that. They're building a narrative. They want to make you look unstable. Financially irresponsible. Vindictive. They want to paint you as someone who's using a minor accident as an excuse to solve financial problems. But I have video evidence of him texting while driving." "You do. And that video is solid. But if they can convince a judge that you've got a history of dishonesty, or financial desperation, they can argue that the video might be manipulated. Or that you're exaggerating the situation for insurance money. It's a despicable tactic, but it works." Sarah sits down, suddenly exhausted. "What are my options?" "We fight back. We file our own suit. We take this to court. The video supports us. I genuinely believe we'd win. But it would be expensive. We're talking $30,000–$40,000 in legal fees. And the trial would take time. Months. Maybe longer. Or we negotiate a better settlement. I can go back to them, show them that we're serious about going to trial, and see if they'll offer something more reasonable." Sarah thinks about Emma. About the time a trial would take. About how her daughter would feel, watching her mother fight a public battle with a rich family, having their financial problems exposed in court documents. Try negotiating, Sarah says quietly. Patricia nods like she expected that. The negotiation takes place over email and phone calls spanning 2 weeks. Patricia is good, better than Sarah could have imagined. She finds inconsistencies in their argument. She documents the road conditions. She argues the legal precedent for texting while driving in the state. By the end of the second week, Karen's lawyers have offered $65,000. It's not full coverage. But it's enough to fix the house and most of the damage to her life. Patricia recommends she take it. They're testing your resolve, Patricia says. This is a significant increase from their original offer. If we go to trial, you might win. But you might not. And even if you do, the legal fees could eat up half of what you win. This settles everything. You can move forward. Sarah thinks about moving forward. About what that means. Can I think about it? She asks. Don't think too long. This offer has an expiration date. They're going to retract it if you don't accept within 48 hours. That night, Sarah sits with Emma and Derek in the kitchen. She explains the situation, all of it, without protecting her daughter from the reality. You should take it, Emma says immediately. Mom, you're stressed. You're not sleeping. I can see it. Take the settlement and let it go. But it's not fair, Sarah says. The full damages are over $100,000. We'd be letting them off easy. Maybe, Derek says carefully. But you'd also be getting your life back. You'd know what the number is. You could repair the garage. You could move on. Sarah looks at her daughter's worried face, her ex-husband's concerned expression. She thinks about Patricia's warning about court. About the months of depositions and hearings. About having her financial struggles put on public display. She calls Patricia the next morning. Tell them I'll accept $65,000, she says. But only if they agree to a non-disclosure agreement. No public statement. No information shared with media. This stays private. Patricia is quiet for a moment. That's smart, she finally says. I'll call them. The settlement is finalized 2 weeks later. Sarah signs the papers in Patricia's office, and suddenly it's over. She has a check for $65,000, and she's signed away her right to ever speak publicly about what happened. She's bought her silence. And as she drives home, Sarah realizes something that makes her feel sick. This is exactly what Karen Meadows wanted. Not a resolution, but a quieting. Not justice, but erasure. Brandon Meadows will drive his Mercedes again. His mother will pay for the repairs. No one outside of a few lawyers will ever know exactly what happened. Sarah will fix her house and try to move on. The first week after signing the settlement, Sarah uses the money to hire a contractor. A man named Luis, who's been in the business for 30 years, surveys the damage and shakes his head with a slow, sympathetic whistle. We're looking at 4 weeks, minimum, he says. Structural work, new framing, insurance details. It's going to be a project. Sarah watches the work begin. She watches her driveway get excavated. She watches the broken pieces of her garage get hauled away in a dumpster. She watches the house that she rebuilt after her divorce slowly get rebuilt again. But something inside her has broken in a way that no contractor can fix. She stops going to the farmer's market. Her pottery wheel has been damaged beyond repair, buried under the collapsed garage. She could buy a new one, could set up the studio again, but the thought exhausts her. Instead, she finds herself sitting in the kitchen at 3 a.m., staring at nothing, unable to sleep. Emma notices. Of course she does. Emma is 16 and hyper-aware of her mother's mental state. You should see someone, Emma says gently one evening. A therapist or something. I'm fine, Sarah says automatically. You're not fine. You're angry all the time. You're tired. You're not even doing pottery anymore. Sarah wants to argue, but Emma is right. Sarah is angry. She's angry at Brandon for his recklessness. She's angry at Karen for her manipulation. She's angry at the system that made her settle for less. She's angry at herself for settling. And mostly, she's angry that she can't talk about it. The non-disclosure agreement means she can't tell anyone what really happened. She can't warn other people about Brandon's driving. She can't expose what Karen did. She can't even vent on social media without risking legal action. She's been silenced. By the third week of Louis's work, Sarah is having trouble functioning. She calls in sick to the part-time job she'd started after the divorce. She tells Derek she's fine when he calls to check on her. She lies to Emma about sleeping. What she actually does is sit in the partially constructed garage, surrounded by exposed beams and construction dust, and think about everything she's lost. Not just the money or the pottery studio, but something less tangible. She's lost the belief that the world is fair. That if you have evidence, justice follows. That people are held accountable. It's a Wednesday when she hits her breaking point. A Wednesday afternoon, Emma at school, Derek at work, the house empty except for Sarah and her thoughts. She's scrolling through her phone, not really looking at anything, when she sees something that stops her cold. A video, posted to Brandon Meadows' Instagram story. Him in his car, a brand new Mercedes, the replacement for the one he crashed, filming himself. The caption reads, "Back in the game. Hashtag blessed, hashtag fuckthepolis, hashtag nobrekeskid." There's a video of him doing a donut in a parking lot. The comments below are filled with laughing emoji and, "That's so Brandon." Sarah watches the video 5 times. She looks at the date, posted 3 days ago. Current. Present. Brandon Meadows, who was supposed to face consequences for his negligence, is bragging about it. Something breaks inside her. Not metaphorically this time. Actually breaks. She picks up her phone and calls Patricia. He posted about it, Sarah says, her voice shaking. He posted a video bragging about it. This violates something. This violates something. Sarah, calm down. Don't tell me to calm down. He was supposed to learn a lesson. He was supposed to understand that his actions have consequences. But he's bragging about it. He's treating it like a joke. I understand you're upset. But the settlement is final. There's nothing we can do. There has to be something. The non-disclosure agreement, he violated it. He's publicly acknowledging the incident. He didn't mention your property or the accident specifically. The video is of him driving in a parking lot. It's not technically a violation of the agreement. Sarah feels something hot and jagged expand in her chest. So he can just do whatever he wants. Sarah, listen to me. You signed the settlement. You got your money. You need to accept that this is finished. You need to move on. But Sarah can't move on. Because she sees now what really happened. Karen Meadows didn't just make the situation go away. She made Sarah go away. She bought Sarah's silence. She made sure that no one would ever know what Brandon really did, what he's really like. And in doing so, she's protected him. She's ensured that there are no consequences. That the only person who suffered was Sarah. That night, Sarah makes a decision. She takes the non-disclosure agreement, the one she signed, the one that cost her $65,000 to agree to, and she reads it carefully. It says she cannot publicly discuss the accident, the settlement, or any details of the case. It says she cannot contact media outlets. It says she cannot discuss the case with anyone except her lawyer and her family. But it doesn't say she can't show people the video evidence. It doesn't say she can't upload the security footage. It doesn't say she can't let people see exactly what Brandon Meadows did, without adding any commentary from herself. Sarah opens her laptop. She creates an anonymous email account. She compiles the security footage into a clean video file, just the footage, no editing, no voiceover, no interpretation. Just what the camera saw. She thinks about uploading it to YouTube. To Twitter. To TikTok. She has her finger on the keyboard when Emma comes home from school. Mom. Emma stands in the doorway, seeing something in her mother's face that frightens her. Mom, what are you doing? Sarah looks at her daughter. Really looks at her. Emma is 16 years old. She's intelligent and kind and she loves her mother. And if Sarah uploads that footage, if she violates the non-disclosure agreement, she could be sued. She could lose the house. Emma could lose the home she has now. Sarah closes the laptop. Nothing, baby, she says. I'm fine. But she's not fine. And as she sits there, holding herself together, Sarah realizes something that Karen Meadows understood all along: sometimes the most effective punishment isn't legal. It's knowing that you have no recourse. It's being silenced. It's being forced to swallow the knowledge that someone hurt you and faced no real consequences. That night, Sarah cries in the shower where Emma can't hear her. She cries because she's broken. Because she's been broken and then forced to keep quiet about it. 3 months of Sarah pretending to be okay. 3 months of rebuilding her garage, of trying to smile at Emma, of going through the motions of a life that feels fundamentally fractured. 3 months of seeing Brandon Meadows' Instagram posts, him and his friends laughing, him and his mother at some country club, him driving his perfect replacement car like he doesn't have a care in the world. 3 months of knowing that no one else knows what he did. It's a Thursday in March when Sarah gets the call. The number is blocked, but the voice on the other end is urgent, almost frantic. Is this Sarah Chen? A woman. Young, maybe early 20s. Yes. Who is this? My name is Jessica Reeves. I'm calling because I think you need to know something. About Brandon Meadows. Sarah's heart rate accelerates. How did you get this number? I found your information online. I'm so sorry to bother you, but I didn't know who else to call. I heard what happened to you. About the garage. And I needed to talk to someone who would understand. Understand what? Jessica Reeves met Brandon Meadows at a party 6 months ago. He was charming and rich and drove an expensive car. He was exactly the kind of boy who gets what he wants. They dated for 3 months. It was good at first, but then it got bad. Controlling. Possessive. And physically rough in ways that scared her. He drove drunk one night, Jessica says, her voice steady but with an undertone of trauma. I was in the car with him. He was texting, not looking at the road, and he sideswiped a parked car. Just hit it and kept driving. I told him we needed to call the police. He told me if I called anyone, he'd tell everyone I was crazy. That I was making it up. That he'd delete the evidence. Did you report it? Sarah asks. No. I was so scared. And his mother. I didn't even know her then, but he talked about her like she could make problems disappear. Like she'd done it before. With other things. Other girls. Sarah feels ice in her veins. There are other girls, she asks. I think so. He would talk about his exes in this weird way, like they'd all done something to betray him, but it sounded like they just tried to leave him or tried to tell someone about what he'd done. His mom paid them off or threatened them or something. How do you know about me? I saw something online. Someone posted about an accident where a car hit a garage, and Brandon was tagged in it on social media. The timing matched what you were talking about. I found an old article about it and your name was mentioned. I've been trying to figure out how to contact you for weeks. Sarah's mind is spinning. If this is true, if Brandon has done this before, if Karen has covered it up before. Why are you calling me now? Sarah asks. Because I'm done being scared, Jessica says, and Sarah can hear the determination in her voice. Because I found out he did it again. Last month, he had an accident with another girl. Car accident. She's threatening to press charges. And his mother is doing the same thing to her that she apparently did to you. Offering settlements. Threatening lawsuits. Making it go away. Do you know who she is? Her name is Megan Walsh. She goes to the same university as Brandon. She's willing to talk to you. Sarah contacts Megan that same evening. Then she contacts Patricia, her lawyer. This is complex, Patricia says, listening to Sarah explain the situation. If there's a pattern of behavior, if Brandon's accidents aren't isolated incidents, that changes things. That suggests negligence. That suggests maybe even intentional behavior or reckless indifference to consequences. Can I do anything? Sarah asks. I signed a non-disclosure agreement. You did. But if Brandon is committing the same negligent acts against other people, if his mother is systematically covering up a pattern of behavior, that's different. There might be legal grounds to reopen your case. Or to testify in support of other victims. Other victims. The word sits heavy. By the end of the week, Patricia has contacted Megan's lawyer. By the end of the month, a pattern is emerging. There are 4 documented accidents involving Brandon Meadows in the last 2 years. 4. With Sarah, it was property damage. With Jessica, it was reckless endangerment. With Megan, it was a hit and run. And with the 4th girl, a woman named Claire who came forward after seeing news of Megan's case, it was aggressive driving that caused her to crash her own car, resulting in a broken collarbone. 4 accidents. For young people paid off. For cases handled quietly by Karen Meadows' lawyers. Until Megan decided not to settle. Megan is younger than Sarah, braver than Sarah. She's willing to go public. She's willing to sue not just Brandon, but Karen for covering up negligent behavior. For threatening witnesses. For systematically enabling her son's recklessness. And when Megan goes public, when she tells her story to local news, when she files her lawsuit, the other victims start to talk. Jessica gives an interview. Claire goes on record about her injuries. A lawyer that Patricia knows contacts Sarah and asks if she'd be willing to support the lawsuit against Karen. The non-disclosure agreement might prevent you from initiating a case, the lawyer explains. But if you're subpoenaed as a witness in Megan's case, you can testify. You can explain what happened. You can be part of breaking the pattern. Sarah thinks about Brandon's Instagram videos. About his smug, consequence-free life. About how Karen Meadows had systematized the covering up of her son's crimes. Not as isolated incidents, but as a business. A mother protecting her negligent son by paying off anyone who might hold him accountable. Sarah sits in the witness stand, and for the first time, she tells the complete truth. She describes the accident. She describes Karen's threats and manipulation. She describes the pressure to settle for less than fair value. She describes the non-disclosure agreement that forced her to stay silent while her attacker went on bragging about what he'd done. She describes the moment she saw Brandon's Instagram video, mocking the consequences that never came. And then Patricia's law partner plays the security footage. In the courtroom. In front of a judge and jury. The footage that the non-disclosure agreement was supposed to hide, now revealed to show exactly what Brandon Meadows did and how he did it. The jury deliberates for 3 hours. When they return, they find Brandon liable for recklessness. More importantly, they find Karen liable for intentionally covering up a pattern of negligent behavior. For threatening witnesses. For using her wealth and legal resources to obstruct justice. The judgment is $500,000. Brandon's license is suspended. Megan's case sends him to criminal court. The attention brings forward a 5th victim, someone who had an accident with Brandon 5 years ago, before Sarah. Before all of this. By the time everything settles, Brandon Meadows has been charged with reckless endangerment, criminal negligence, and driving under the influence in connection with one of the previous accidents. His license is permanently revoked. And Karen Meadows, the woman who tried to buy her way out of accountability, is facing her own civil suit and possible criminal charges for witness intimidation. Sarah stands outside the courthouse on the day the jury announces its verdict, and for the first time in 7 months, she cries. But these are different tears. These are the tears of someone who has been broken and then rebuilt, not by forgetting, but by refusing to stay quiet. Emma is next to her, her arm around her mother's waist. "You did it, Mom," Emma says. "You actually did it." But Sarah knows she didn't do it alone. It took Jessica's courage. It took Megan's refusal to settle. It took Claire and the 5th victim being willing to be publicly associated with their trauma. It took a whole group of people refusing to be silenced. Patricia calls that evening. "There's one more thing," she says. "The judge is allowing you to amend your settlement. Because Karen's non-disclosure agreement was used as a tool of intimidation to cover up ongoing criminal behavior, it's been voided. You can speak about your case publicly now. And the additional judgment we received against Karen, it's a significant amount." "How significant?" Sarah asks. Patricia tells her. It's more than Sarah made in 5 years. It's enough to not just repair her house, but to expand it. To build a studio that's 3 times the size of her garage. To invest in her pottery business properly. To send Emma to any college she wants without student loans. It's enough to feel like the universe finally balanced the scales. That night, Sarah stands in her newly rebuilt garage. Louise finished the work 3 months ago, and the space has been empty since, waiting for her to have the courage to use it again. She wheels in a new pottery wheel. Top of the line. She sets up her tools. She hangs her finished pieces on the walls, the ones that survived the accident, the ones she's made in the intervening months. And then she sits at the wheel, centers the clay, and begins to shape something new. The clay is cool and solid between her fingers, responsive to every motion, every intention. She shapes it into a vessel, a bowl, wide and deep. Something strong. Something that has been broken and reformed and is no less beautiful for the cracks in its foundation. Emma stands in the doorway, watching. "What are you making?" Emma asks. "Proof," Sarah says, her hands moving with the rhythm of the wheel. "Proof that even when things break, you can rebuild them. You just have to be stubborn enough to try." The bowl emerges from the clay, imperfect and real. Sarah removes it from the wheel carefully, her hands steady. Outside, the spring rain begins to fall. Sarah thinks about the night of the accident, the rain, the crash, the silence that followed. She thinks about the months of fighting, the pressure, the moment she almost uploaded the footage and destroyed everything. She thinks about Karen Meadows, who will spend the next several years in bankruptcy and legal fees. Who will lose her reputation and possibly face criminal charges. Who learned, too late, that some things cannot be bought away. And she thinks about Brandon Meadows, who will spend his youth without a license, without his mother's protection, without the ability to escape consequences anymore. Justice, Sarah realizes, isn't always swift or clean. Sometimes it's slow and complicated and requires breaking yourself to pieces in order to put yourself back together. But when it finally arrives, when you've earned it through your own refusal to be silenced, it's worth every moment of pain that came before. Sarah sets the bowl on a shelf to dry, ready to be glazed, ready to be fired in the kiln. Ready to become something permanent.